Elena Morales had exactly $47 in her checking account when the world exploded around her. The number haunted her as she walked down South Halstead Street at 3:15 on a Tuesday afternoon, her canvas tote bag heavy with ungraded spelling tests from her third-grade class. $47. 6 days until payday. Rent was already 2 weeks late, and Mrs. Chen, her landlord, had stopped accepting apologies. The October wind cut through her thin jacket, the kind of cold that Chicago delivered like a warning shot. Elena pulled the fabric tighter, her breath forming small clouds in the afternoon air. She'd taken the long route home from beloved elementary, avoiding the main streets where her favorite coffee shop tempted her with lattes she couldn't afford. Discipline. That's what her mother would have called it. Elena called it survival. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The gunfire started without warning. The first shot cracked through the air like a whip, followed immediately by the savage thunder of automatic weapons. Elena's body reacted before her mind caught up, diving behind a parked delivery truck as bullets tore through metal and glass. The sound was deafening, primal, drowning out her scream. She pressed herself against the truck's wheel well, hands over her head, spelling tests scattering across the blood-stained sidewalk. This wasn't supposed to happen here. Not on a Tuesday afternoon. Not in this neighborhood. Then she heard it. A child's scream, high-pitched and absolutely terrified. "Help! Somebody help!" Elena's head snapped toward the sound. Through the chaos of gunfire and squealing tires, she saw him. A small boy, maybe 9 years old, crouched behind a black SUV that was being torn apart by bullets. He wore a private school uniform, navy blazer and khaki pants, now covered in dust and terror. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat, his brown eyes wide with shock. He was alone, completely, devastatingly alone. The SUV he hid behind had bullet holes spiderwebbing across the windshield. 2 bodies lay motionless in the front seats, security detail judging by their build and the weapons still holstered at their sides. The attackers, 3 men in dark clothes with assault rifles, were advancing methodically, reloading as they moved. Every rational cell in Elena's body screamed at her to stay down, stay hidden, stay alive. She had no training for this, no weapon, no backup. She was a 29-year-old elementary school teacher who made bulletin boards about the water cycle and taught kids how to share crayons. But that little boy was going to die. Elena's eyes darted around desperately, landing on a construction site across the street, orange cones, caution tape, and a pile of loose bricks near the sidewalk. She moved without thinking, her body propelled by pure instinct. She grabbed 2 bricks, their weight solid and reassuring in her shaking hands. Then she ran. The distance between the delivery truck and the SUV felt like miles. Bullets whined past her head. So close she felt the air displacement. Her lungs burned, her legs trembled, but she kept running, kept moving, because stopping meant death. She crashed into the space behind the SUV, her shoulder slamming against the boy. He screamed, flinching away, then stared at her with eyes that had seen far too much for a child. "I've got you," Elena gasped, wrapping one arm around him and pulling him tight against her body. "I've got you, baby. Stay down." "They killed Tony and Marcus," the boy sobbed into her shoulder, his small body shaking violently. "They killed them, and they're coming for me. They're going to kill me too." "No, they're not." Elena's voice came out fierce, absolutely certain despite the terror flooding her veins. "I won't let them." One of the gunmen rounded the SUV, his rifle raised. Elena didn't hesitate. She threw the brick with every ounce of strength she possessed. It caught him square in the face, the sickening crunch of breaking bone cutting through the gunfire. He went down hard, his weapon clattering across the pavement. The second attacker appeared on the other side. Elena threw her remaining brick, but her aim was off, glancing off his shoulder. He snarled, raising his rifle toward them. Time slowed down. Elena saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the cold calculation in his eyes. She wrapped herself completely around the boy, shielding him with her body, and waited for the bullets. They never came. Instead, the air filled with a different sound, the deep, throaty roar of powerful engines. Tires screamed against asphalt. Car doors flew open with military precision. And then, suddenly, there was an army. Black SUVs blocked both ends of the street, at least 6 of them, disgorging men in dark suits who moved with lethal coordination. These weren't police. They were something else entirely, something more dangerous. The remaining attackers tried to run, They didn't make it far. The gunfire that erupted was controlled, precise, professional. 3 shots, 3 bodies hitting the pavement. It was over in seconds, executed with the kind of efficiency that spoke of serious training and zero hesitation. Elena kept herself wrapped around the boy, her eyes squeezed shut, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She didn't move, couldn't move. Her body had locked into protection mode, every muscle rigid with the need to keep this child safe. Marco. The voice cut through everything. It was deep, commanding, and absolutely lethal. The kind of voice that expected immediate obedience and never had to ask twice. Elena felt the boy stiffen in her arms. "Marco, are you hurt?" Footsteps approached, measured and purposeful. Elena forced her eyes open and looked up. The man, standing over them, was the most terrifying thing she'd ever seen. He was tall, at least 6'3", with broad shoulders that strained against his perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from granite, all sharp angles and hard lines. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. They were dark brown, almost black, and completely void of mercy. This was a man who made people disappear. "Uncle Dante," Marco sobbed, trying to untangle himself from Elena's protective grip. "Uncle Dante, they killed Tony and Marcus. They killed them. Uncle Dante." The words registered slowly through Elena's shock. The man, Dante, knelt down. The movement was surprisingly graceful for someone his size. His eyes swept over Marco with clinical precision, checking for injuries. Then his gaze shifted to Elena. She froze under that stare. It was like being examined by a predator deciding if you were threat or prey. "Let him go," Dante said, quietly. It wasn't a request. Elena's arms loosened automatically, her body responding to the command in his voice before her brain could process it. Marco scrambled into his uncle's arms, and the transformation was startling. The cold, lethal man softened just slightly, one large hand cradling the back of the boy's head with surprising gentleness. "You're safe now," Dante murmured into Marco's hair. "I've got you. Nobody's going to hurt you." Another man approached, older, maybe 50, with silver hair and the bearing of a military officer. "Boss, we need to move. Police will be here in 3 minutes." "Boss." Of course he was. Dante stood, lifting Marco with one arm like the boy weighed nothing. His eyes returned to Elena, who was still crouched on the ground, covered in dust and blood that wasn't hers, shaking so badly her teeth chattered. "Who are you?" he demanded. Elena Morales." Her voice didn't sound like her own. "I'm a teacher. I was just walking home and I heard him screaming and you threw a brick at an armed man." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact delivered with something that might have been incredulity if this man were capable of such emotion. "He was going to hurt Marco," Elena said simply. "I couldn't just let him." Something flickered in Dante's dark eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. It was gone too fast to identify. "Uncle Dante, she saved me," Marco said, his voice muffled against his uncle's shoulder. "She ran through the bullets. She covered me. She threw bricks at the bad men even though she was scared. Don't let her get in trouble. Please." Dante's jaw tightened. He looked at Elena for a long, assessing moment. Then he made a decision. "Salvatore," he called to the silver-haired man. "Get her in the car. Now." "What?" Elena scrambled to her feet, alarm bells ringing. "No, I need to go home. You need to come with us." Dante's voice left no room for argument. "You were seen. Your face is known. Salvatores don't leave witnesses, Miss Morales. You stay here, you're dead by nightfall." The words hit her like a physical blow. "But I didn't do anything. I just helped. You interfered in a mob hit." His expression was stone. "That makes you a problem." "My problem now." 2 of his men moved toward her, not threatening but clearly ready to enforce compliance if necessary. Elena's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare. She'd just been walking home with spelling tests. "I have a class tomorrow," she said desperately. 23 kids who need me. I can't just disappear. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. "Your class will get a substitute." Dante shifted Marco higher on his hip. "Your life is worth more than a lesson plan. Move. Now." The sirens were getting closer. Elena looked at the bodies on the ground, the bullet-riddled SUV, the blood spreading across the concrete. She thought about $47 in her checking account, about Mrs. Chen and the overdue rent, about her, third graders learning long division. Then she looked at Marco, who was watching her with desperate, pleading eyes. She'd already made her choice when she ran through the gunfire. Elena walked toward the waiting SUV on legs that barely supported her weight. Salvatore, the silver-haired man, opened the door with professional courtesy that seemed absurd given the circumstances. "In you go, miss," he said almost gently. She climbed inside the plush leather interior, her canvas bag still somehow clutched in her white-knuckled grip. Dante slid in beside her, still holding Marco, who refused to let go of his uncle's neck. The door closed with an expensive, solid thunk. The SUV pulled away from the carnage, smooth and swift, just as the first police cars screamed around the corner. Elena stared straight ahead, her mind blank with shock. In the span of 5 minutes, her entire life had detonated. She didn't know where she was going, didn't know what would happen to her, didn't know if she'd ever see her classroom or her apartment or her normal life again. "Thank you." She turned her head. Dante was looking at her, his expression still hard but something different lurking beneath the surface. Something almost human. "You saved my nephew's life," he continued, his voice low. "That means something in my world. It means everything." "I couldn't just let him die," Elena whispered. "Most people would have." Dante's eyes held hers. "Most people choose survival over courage. You chose differently. That makes you either very brave or very stupid. Can't it be both?" The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. "We'll find out." Marco finally lifted his head from his uncle's shoulder, turning to look at Elena with red-rimmed eyes. "Are you going to stay with us? Uncle Dante will keep you safe. He keeps everyone safe." Elena didn't know how to answer that. She looked at Dante, at this terrifying man who commanded killers and inspired absolute loyalty from a traumatized child, a man who'd just upended her entire existence because she'd done the right thing. "For now," Dante said, answering for her. His tone made it clear the decision was his, not hers. "Miss Morales is under my protection until the threat is eliminated. She stays with us." The words should have sounded like a death sentence. Instead, wrapped in the cocoon of the armored SUV, with Marco's hand suddenly reaching out to grip hers with desperate trust, they sounded like something else entirely. They sounded like belonging. Elena squeezed the boy's hand gently and watched the city blur past the tinted windows, heading toward a destination she couldn't imagine and a future she hadn't chosen. She'd saved a child from gunfire, and now she belonged to the most dangerous man in Chicago. The drive took 40 minutes, leaving the familiar streets of Elena's neighborhood far behind. They traveled north, into areas where the houses became estates and privacy meant 12-foot walls topped with cameras. The SUV finally turned through iron gates that opened automatically, revealing a sprawling property that looked more like a fortress than a home. The mansion was imposing. 3 stories of stone and glass, with wings extending on either side like protective arms. Security was everywhere, men in suits patrolling the grounds, cameras tracking their approach, sensors she couldn't see but knew were there. This wasn't a house. It was a stronghold. The SUV pulled into a circular driveway where a fountain splashed serenely, the peaceful sound at odds with the violence they'd just escaped. Dante's door opened before the vehicle fully stopped, and he stepped out with Marco still in his arms. Elena climbed out after him, her legs shaky, and stared up at the mansion. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the immaculate lawn. Everything was perfect, controlled, dangerous. "This way, Miss Morales." Salvatore appeared at her elbow, gesturing toward the main entrance. Elena followed numbly, her teacher's bag still clutched to her chest like a security blanket. Inside, the mansion was even more intimidating. Marble floors reflected the light from crystal chandeliers. Original artwork lined the walls. Everything screamed wealth and power and consequence. A woman appeared from a side hallway older, maybe 60, with steel gray hair pulled back in an efficient bun. She wore a simple black dress and moved with the confidence of someone who ran this household with an iron fist. "Mr. Caruso," she said, her voice sharp with concern. "I heard about the attack. Is Marco—" "He's fine, Rosa." Dante set Marco down gently, though the boy immediately grabbed his uncle's hand. "Thanks to this woman." Rosa's shrewd eyes assessed Elena in one sweeping glance. "I see. And you've brought her here." "She's under my protection. The guest suite in the East Wing. 24-hour security. It wasn't a request." Rosa nodded crisply. "Of course, Miss Morales, Elena Morales." Miss Morales, if you'll follow me, I'll show you to your room. I'm sure you'd like to wash up and rest after your ordeal." Elena wanted to protest, to demand answers, to understand what was happening to her life. But her body was shutting down, adrenaline crash hitting hard. She nodded mutely. "Marco needs to be checked by Dr. Vitali," Dante was saying to Salvatore. "Full examination. I want to know if he has so much as a scratch. Already on his way, boss. And get me everything on the Salvatores, every safe house, every soldier, every dollar they have. I want their entire operation mapped by midnight." Dante's voice had turned to ice. "They came after my nephew. They die." The casual way he delivered the death sentence made Elena's stomach clench. "Uncle Dante," Marco said quietly. "What about Miss Elena? Is she going to be okay?" Dante looked at Elena, his dark eyes unreadable. "She's going to be fine. Nobody touches what's mine." The possessive phrase should have terrified her. Instead, after the chaos and violence, it felt oddly reassuring. She was claimed, protected, whatever that meant in this world. "Come, dear," Rosa said more gently, touching Elena's elbow. "You look ready to collapse." Elena let herself be led away, through hallways lined with expensive art, past rooms that looked like museum exhibits. Finally, Rosa opened a door to reveal a suite larger than Elena's entire apartment. The bedroom was decorated in soft creams and golds, with a king-sized bed that looked like a cloud. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the manicured gardens. A sitting area with plush furniture. A bathroom visible through an open door that featured a tub the size of a small pool. "The closet has clothes in various sizes," Rosa explained briskly. "Help yourself to anything. Dinner is at 7 in the main dining room, but I can have something sent up if you prefer." Elena just stared at her. Rosa's expression softened slightly. "I know this is overwhelming, but Mr. Caruso takes his responsibilities seriously. You saved Marco's life. That means you're family now, whether you understand it or not." "I'm not family. I'm a stranger who happened to be in the wrong place." "No, dear. You were in exactly the right place." Rosa moved toward the door. "Rest. Someone will check on you in an hour." She left, and Elena heard the unmistakable sound of a lock engaging. Not imprisoning her, she realized. Protecting her. Elena stood in the center of the opulent room, still clutching her canvas bag with its scattered spelling tests. Her hands were shaking. Her entire body was shaking. She'd thrown bricks at armed men. She'd run through gunfire. She'd wrapped herself around a child and waited to die. And now she was here, in a mansion owned by a Mafia boss who'd claimed her as his. Elena walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful garden where men with guns patrolled the perimeter. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. Somewhere out there was her tiny apartment, her classroom, her normal life. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, seeing missed calls from her principal, from fellow teachers, from her mother. The real world, demanding answers she couldn't give. Elena turned off the phone. Then she walked into the marble bathroom, turned on the shower, and let herself finally, completely break down. Elena woke to the smell of coffee and the soft sound of rain against the windows. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then, reality crashed back the gunfire, Marco's terrified face, Dante Caruso's cold eyes claiming her as his responsibility. She sat up in the unfamiliar bed, her body aching from tension she'd carried through the night. The bedside clock read 6:47 a.m. Wednesday morning. She should be getting ready for school, preparing lessons on fractions and vocabulary words. Instead, she was in a mansion owned by the Chicago Mafia, wearing silk pajamas she'd found in the closet because her own clothes had been covered in blood and dust. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Morales?" Rosa's voice came through the door. "I have breakfast for you." Elena wrapped herself in the plush robe hanging in the bathroom and opened the door. Rosa entered with a silver tray laden with food, fresh fruit, pastries that looked bakery-made, scrambled eggs, and coffee that smelled like heaven. "Mr. Caruso requests your presence in his office at 8, Rosa said, setting the tray on the small dining table by the window. "I've laid out appropriate clothing in the closet." "Appropriate for what?" Elena asked, her voice still rough from sleep and yesterday's screaming. Rosa's expression was carefully neutral. "For staying alive, dear." After Rosa left, Elena picked at the breakfast, her stomach too knotted to appreciate the quality. She showered, letting the hot water ease muscles still tight with fear, then examined the clothes Rosa had selected. Dark jeans that actually fit her perfectly. How had they known her size? A soft cashmere sweater in deep green. Leather boots that looked expensive but felt comfortable. Everything was understated but clearly costly. The kind of clothes that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. Elena dressed slowly, staring at herself in the full-length mirror. She looked like someone else. Someone who belonged in this world of marble floors and armed guards. She hated how well the illusion worked. At precisely 8 o'clock, there was another knock. A young man in a dark suit stood in the hallway, his face professionally blank. "Miss Morales, I'm Anthony. I'll escort you to Mr. Caruso's office." Escort. The word was polite, but Elena understood. She was being watched, controlled, managed. She followed Anthony through the mansion's corridors, noting the security cameras, the armed men, positioned at strategic intervals, the way every window had reinforced glass. This wasn't just wealth. This was warfare. Dante's office was on the second floor, in the west wing. Anthony knocked once, then opened the heavy oak door. The room was masculine and imposing dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with what looked like first editions. Behind a massive desk sat Dante Caruso, reading something on his laptop with the same intensity he'd probably used to order yesterday's kills. He looked up as she entered, and Elena felt that same predatory assessment from the day before. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs across from his desk. Elena sat, her spine straight, refusing to show the fear churning in her gut. Dante closed his laptop and leaned back, studying her. In the morning light streaming through the windows, she could see details she'd missed yesterday. The faint scar along his jawline, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of a sleepless night. The wedding ring he still wore on his left hand, despite what she'd learned from Rosa, his wife had died 2 years ago. "How did you sleep?" he asked. The question was so normal, so domestic, it threw her. "Fine, thank you." "You're lying," Rosa said. "You had nightmares. The guards heard you screaming." Heat flooded Elena's cheeks. Of course they'd been listening. "I'm fine." "No, you're not. You're traumatized. You witnessed extreme violence, came under fire, and watched 3 men die." Dante's voice was matter of fact. "That's not something a civilian processes easily." "And you would know?" "I would." Something dark flickered in his eyes. "I've been watching people process trauma my entire life, usually because I caused it." The honesty was startling. Elena had expected lies, manipulation, not this brutal self-awareness. "Why am I here?" she asked quietly. "Really here? You could have put me in a safe house somewhere, given me protection without bringing me into your home." Dante was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower, almost intimate. "Marco asked for you. 3 times last night he woke up crying, asking if you were safe, asking if the bad men had taken you." He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "My nephew has been through hell, Miss Morales. His parents, my brother and sister-in-law, were killed in a car bombing 18 months ago. He watched it happen. He hasn't slept through the night since. He doesn't trust anyone except me and Rosa." Elena's breath caught. "I'm so sorry. But last night, after Dr. Vitali examined him and Rosa put him to bed, he slept for 6 hours straight. Because you were here. Because you proved to him that sometimes someone stays. Someone fights." Dante's expression was granite. "So you're here because my nephew needs you. And what Marco needs, he gets. I'm not a security blanket. I'm a person with a life. You had a life." Dante pulled out a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to her. "This is what you have now." Elena opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, her apartment building, her school, her regular coffee shop. Each photo had red X marks, locations that were compromised, dangerous. "The Salvatores put a hit out on you last night," Dante continued. $25,000. Not much, really, but enough to motivate every low-level thug in Chicago. You can't go home, can't go to work, can't contact anyone without endangering them. Elena stared at the photos, her vision blurring. "For how long?" "Until I eliminate the threat." "And how long will that take?" "However long it takes." Dante's voice was steel. "The Salvatores made this personal when they tried to kill Marco. They declared war. War doesn't have a timeline, Miss Morales. It has a body count." The casualness with which he discussed violence made Elena's stomach turn. "I can't just live here indefinitely. I have responsibilities. My students will be fine. I've already ensured your principal received a call about a family emergency requiring an indefinite leave of absence. Your rent is paid through the end of the year. Your car has been moved to secure storage. He ticked off items like a checklist. Your mother in Phoenix received a call saying you're fine but need space. Everything in your civilian life is handled. Elena's hands clenched into fists. You had no right. I had every right. You saved Marco. That makes you mine to protect. He said it like it was obvious, inarguable. And I protect what's mine absolutely. I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's. You became mine the moment you threw that brick. Dante stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. He stopped directly in front of her chair, towering over her. I didn't ask for this, Miss Morales. I didn't ask for you to be brave. But you were. And now we both have to live with the consequences. Elena forced herself to meet his eyes, to not show fear. What if I leave anyway? What if I just walk out that door? You won't make it to the gate before my men stop you. And if by some miracle you did, you'd be dead by sunset. The Salvatores have your photo. They have your information. They will find you. He crouched down, bringing his face level with hers. I'm not the villain in this story, Elena. I'm the only reason you're still breathing. The use of her first name sent an unexpected shiver through her. His voice, when he said it, was different, softer, almost possessive. Then what am I supposed to do? She whispered. Survive, adapt. Accept that this is your reality now. He stood, returning to his desk. And help Marco heal. The boy's been broken since his parents died. Yesterday I saw him smile for the first time in 18 months. Because of you. The door opened and Marco himself appeared, still in pajamas, his dark hair messy from sleep. Rosa followed, looking apologetic. I'm sorry, Mr. Caruso. He insisted, It's fine, Rosa. Dante's entire demeanor shifted, the cold Mafia boss replaced by something gentler. Come here, kiddo. Marco ran to his uncle, but his eyes were on Elena. You're still here. Uncle Dante said you'd stay, but I thought maybe you left like… He stopped, biting his lip. Like everyone else leaves, Elena understood. Like his parents. Like anyone he dared to care about. I'm still here, Elena said softly, her anger at Dante momentarily forgotten. I'm not going anywhere, Marco. The boy's face lit up. Really? You promise? Elena glanced at Dante, who was watching her with those unreadable dark eyes. She was trapped, manipulated, controlled. But looking at Marco's desperate hope, she knew she couldn't fight this. Not yet. I promise, she said. Marco launched himself at her, wrapping small arms around her waist. Elena hugged him back, feeling his relief in the way he trembled slightly. Over the boy's head, her eyes met Dante's. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement, maybe, or a declaration of war. She wasn't sure which. What she did know was that she'd just made a promise to a traumatized child. And despite everything, despite her anger and fear, she meant it. Miss Elena, Marco said, pulling back to look up at her. Can you have breakfast with me? Rosa makes the best chocolate chip pancakes, and Uncle Dante never eats breakfast because he's always in meetings. But maybe you could make him eat something too, because Rosa says he doesn't take care of himself and… Marco, Dante interrupted gently. Breathe. The boy grinned. Sorry, I just really want Miss Elena to stay. She's staying, Dante confirmed, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. She's part of the family now. The words should have felt like a prison sentence. Instead, wrapped in Marco's enthusiastic hug and the strange protective atmosphere of the mansion, they felt like something else. They felt like inevitability. Breakfast with Marco was surprisingly normal. The boy chattered about his homeschool lessons, his favorite video games, the gardens where he liked to play when Uncle Dante said it was safe. He asked Elena about teaching, about her students, hanging on every word like she was describing adventures in a foreign land. Dante joined them after 20 minutes, sitting at the head of the table with a cup of black coffee. He didn't eat, just watched Marco interact with Elena with an expression that might have been satisfaction. Miss Elena teaches 3rd grade, Marco announced proudly. That's how old I am. I should be in 3rd grade, but Uncle Dante says regular school isn't safe. It's not, Dante said quietly. Not with the enemies I have. Marco's face fell slightly. I know, but sometimes I miss it. Having friends and recess and a normal life, Elena finished softly. Yeah, she looked at Dante, seeing the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to give Marco normalcy, but normalcy meant vulnerability, meant risk. In his world, Love meant control and protection, meant isolation. You know, Elena said carefully, just because you can't go to regular school doesn't mean you can't have some of those experiences. We could create a classroom here, invite some carefully vetted children for supervised playdates, give you a taste of normal while staying safe. Dante's eyes narrowed. Vetted how? However you need to vet them. Background checks, security screenings, whatever makes you comfortable. Elena met his gaze steadily. But Marco needs socialization. He needs to be around other kids his age, even in controlled circumstances. It's crucial for his development. She's right, boss. They all turned. Salvatore stood in the doorway, his silver hair gleaming in the morning light. I've raised 4 kids, Salvatore continued. Keeping them in a bubble doesn't protect them. It cripples them. The boy needs more than just guards and tutors. Dante's jaw tightened, but Elena could see him considering it. I'll think about it. Really? Marco's eyes went wide. I could have friends? Maybe, if it can be done safely. Dante stood, finishing his coffee. Salvatore, I need you in my office. We have the Salvatore intel to review. Of course, boss. As Dante moved toward the door, Marco called out, Uncle Dante? He stopped, looking back. Thank you for keeping Miss Elena safe, and for letting her stay. Something softened in Dante's severe features. Always, Marco. I'll always keep the people you love safe. Then he was gone, and Elena was left processing his words. The people you love. Marco had known her for less than 24 hours, but in his traumatized world, she represented something precious, someone who'd chosen him, who'd risked everything without hesitation. And Dante would protect her not because of who she was, but because of what she meant to his nephew. It should have felt like being used. Instead, it felt oddly like being valued. The rest of the morning passed in a strange domestic rhythm. Rosa gave Elena a tour of the mansion. 30 rooms spread across 3 floors, each more opulent than the last. The library where Marco did his lessons. The game room with every console imaginable. The indoor pool. The panic room disguised as a wine cellar. In case of emergency, Rosa explained matter-of-factly, showing Elena the reinforced steel door hidden behind a false wall. It has 3 weeks of supplies, satellite communication, and enough weapons to hold off a small army. Elena stared at the arsenal. Does that happen often? Small armies attacking? Often enough. It was a sobering reminder of exactly whose house she was in. They found Marco in the library, working through math problems with his tutor, an older woman named Mrs. Chen, who taught with military precision. When Marco saw Elena, he immediately abandoned his work. Miss Elena, can you help me? I don't understand long division. Mrs. Chen looked affronted, but Elena smiled. Of course. May I? The tutor huffed but moved aside. Elena sat next to Marco, looking at his worksheet. The problems were actually quite advanced for 3rd grade. Okay, let's think about this differently, Elena said, grabbing a piece of scrap paper. Imagine you have 48 cookies. She spent the next 30 minutes teaching him, using the techniques that made her good at her job, breaking down complex concepts into tangible, relatable pieces. Marco absorbed it eagerly, his bright mind just needing the right approach. When he finally solved a problem on his own, he bounced in his seat with excitement. I did it. Uncle Dante, I did it. Elena turned. Dante stood in the doorway watching them. She had no idea how long he'd been there. Good job, Marco, he said, pride evident in his voice. Then to Elena, can I speak with you? Privately. Her stomach clenched, but she nodded. She followed him out of the library, down the hallway to a smaller office, less formal than his main workspace, with comfortable chairs and softer lighting. Dante closed the door behind them. You're good with him, he said without preamble. I'm a teacher. It's what I do. No. Dante moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the smaller space. You're more than that. You see him, not as my nephew or an obligation or a security risk. You see the boy underneath all the trauma. That's rare. Elena didn't know what to say to that. I need to explain something to you, Dante continued, his voice lower now. About yesterday. About the Salvatores. Your war. Yes. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that made him look younger, more human. The Salvatore family has been trying to take my territory for 3 years. It started as business territory disputes, profit margins, the usual bullshit. But last year, it became personal. He walked to the window, staring out at the grounds. My wife, Isabella, was pregnant. 8 months. We were going to have a daughter. His voice was carefully controlled, but Elena heard the razor edge of grief beneath it. The Salvatores planted a bomb in our car, a sophisticated device designed to look like mechanical failure. Elena's breath caught. Isabella died instantly. Our daughter. He stopped, jaw clenched. They never had a chance. I was supposed to be in that car. I was running late. They died because I was running late. Dante, Elena whispered, using his first name without thinking. I'm so sorry. Don't be. Sorry doesn't change anything. He turned to face her, and his eyes were black fire. But revenge does. Every day since then, I've been systematically destroying the Salvatore family, taking their businesses, killing their soldiers, cutting off their supply lines. Yesterday was their retaliation. They couldn't get to me, so they went after Marco. The pieces fell into place. That's why you're so protective. He's all I have left. My brother and his wife died in that same bombing. They were in another car behind us, in the convoy. The Salvatores wiped out my entire family in one night. His voice dropped to something lethal. Except Marco. And now you've made yourself part of this by saving him. I didn't ask to be part of this. Neither did I. Dante moved toward her, each step deliberate. Have her. But here we are. You in my house. Under my protection. Teaching my nephew and making him smile for the first time in 18 months. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her monthly rent. I need you to understand something, Elena. Her name on his lips again, intimate and possessive. I'm not a good man. I've killed people, ordered deaths, done things that would haunt you if you knew the details. But I keep my promises, and I promised Marco you'd be safe. That means you will be, no matter what it costs. Even if it costs your war? Even then. The answer was immediate, absolute. Marco's happiness is worth more than revenge, than territory, than anything. Elena stared at him, this terrifying man who'd just admitted he'd sacrifice everything for a child's smile. It didn't match the cold Mafia boss she'd met yesterday. It didn't match the killer who'd ordered men executed without hesitation. It made him human, and that was far more dangerous than the monster she'd expected. I don't understand you, she admitted. Good. That makes 2 of us. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I don't understand why a schoolteacher threw bricks at armed men. Why you wrapped yourself around my nephew and waited to die. You should have run. Should have saved yourself. I couldn't. Why not? Elena thought about her answer. About all the reasons she'd moved without thinking, her protective instincts as a teacher, her inability to watch a child suffer, the basic human decency that demanded action even when action was insane. Because some things are worth dying for, she said finally. And a child's life is one of them. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something completely unexpected. He smiled. A real smile that transformed his severe face into something almost beautiful. You're going to be trouble, he said softly. I can tell. Is that a threat? No, Elena. He reached out, tucking a strand of her dark hair behind her ear in a gesture so intimate it stole her breath. It's a promise. The air between them crackled with tension. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was dangerous. He was dangerous. Everything about this situation screamed that she should run, resist, fight. But looking into his dark eyes, seeing the grief and determination and unexpected gentleness, she couldn't move. The moment shattered when Salvatore's voice crackled through the intercom on Dante's desk. Boss, we have a situation. You need to see this. Dante's expression immediately hardened back into the Mafia boss. On my way. He looked at Elena. Stay in the house. Don't go near the windows. Stay with Marco. What's happening? The Salvatores are making their next move. He headed for the door, then paused. Rosa will stay with you. Trust no one else. Then he was gone, and Elena was left alone in the small office, her fingers touching the spot where he'd brushed her hair, her mind racing. She'd been here less than 24 hours, and already her world had tilted completely off axis. She'd gone from struggling teacher to protected asset, from independence to captivity, from ordinary to entangled with a man who commanded death with a phone call. And the most terrifying part? She wasn't sure she wanted to leave anymore. The situation Salvatore had mentioned turned out to be a message. The brutal, unmistakable kind that left no room for misinterpretation. Elena learned about it from Rosa, who appeared in the library where she and Marco were reading together, her normally composed face tight with concern. "Miss Morales, Mr. Caruso requests you. Bring Marco to the safe room. Now." The urgency in her voice made Elena's stomach drop. Marco's hand tightened in hers. "Continue. What's happening?" the boy asked, fear creeping into his voice. "Just a precaution, sweetheart," Rosa said, but her eyes told a different story. They moved quickly through the mansion's corridors, Rosa's hand on Elena's elbow, guiding them toward the wine cellar. 2 armed guards flanked them, hands inside their jackets where weapons undoubtedly waited. The panic room door was already open. Inside, Dante stood with Salvatore and 3 other men Elena didn't recognize, all gathered around a laptop screen. The tension in the small space was suffocating. Dante looked up as they entered, his face carved from stone. "Marco, stay with Miss Elena. Rosa, you too." "Uncle Dante, what's wrong?" Marco asked, his voice small. "Nothing for you to worry about. I'm handling it." But Dante's eyes, when they met Elena's, told her everything. This was bad. Rosa ushered Marco to the far corner where a collection of books and games waited distractions for a child during lockdown. Elena started to follow, but Dante caught her wrist. "You should see this," he said quietly. "You need to understand what we're dealing with." He turned the laptop toward her. The screen showed a news article, time-stamped from 30 minutes ago. The headline made her blood run cold. "Beloved elementary teacher wanted in connection with gangland shooting." Below, it was her face. Her school ID photo, smiling and professional. And beneath that, a statement from the Chicago Police Department calling her a person of interest in yesterday's shooting, claiming she'd been seen at the scene, that witnesses placed her with known Caruso associates. "They're framing you," Dante said, his voice deadly quiet, "making you look like an accomplice instead of a victim. It's a classic Salvatore move, turn the law against my people." Elena's hands shook as she read the article. Her name, her reputation, 23 kids who trusted her, now being told their teacher was involved with organized crime. "This will destroy me," she whispered. "No." Dante's hand covered hers on the laptop edge. "It won't, because I won't let it. How can you stop this? It's the police. It's official. It's manageable." His certainty was absolute. "I have people in the department. People who owe me favors. This story will be retracted by tonight, and the Salvatores will pay for using your name." Elena pulled her hand away, anger cutting through the shock. "This is what you meant, isn't it? When you said my old life was over. You knew they'd do this. Knew they'd twist everything until I can't go back." "I suspected they might try." Dante didn't apologize, didn't soften it. "The Salvatores are predictable. They hit where it hurts most: reputation, family, innocence. They turned you into a criminal to isolate you, to ensure you have nowhere to run except deeper into my protection." "It's working," Elena said bitterly. "Yes." Dante closed the laptop. "Which means we move to the next phase." "Which is?" His dark eyes held hers. "Offense. They've made their move. Now I make mine." Salvatore stepped forward, his weathered face grim. "Boss, with respect, charging in angry is exactly what they want. This is bait. They're trying to draw you out, make you reckless." "I'm aware." Dante's voice was ice. "Which is why I'm not charging. I'm strategizing. Get me Marco Benedetti on the phone. Tell him I'm calling in his debt." "Benedetti?" Salvatore's eyebrows rose. "That's a nuclear option, boss. They used a civilian, a teacher. They put her face on the news." Dante's control was cracking, fury bleeding through. "That crosses a line even in our world. Benedetti will understand." Elena had no idea who Benedetti was, but the weight of the name made even Salvatore pause. "I'll make the call," the older man said finally. As the men dispersed to their tasks, Dante turned back to Elena. "You'll stay here until I give the all clear. It's the most secure room in the house. Rosa has everything you need." "How long?" "As long as it takes." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "Elena, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She thought about the question. Trust him? This man who'd upended her life, who killed without hesitation, who operated in a world of violence and corruption. But she also thought about Marco's hand in hers, the way Dante's eyes softened when he looked at his nephew, the absolute certainty in his promise to keep her safe. "I don't know," she answered honestly. Something flickered in his expression, disappointment maybe, or understanding. "Fair enough. But trust this. I will fix what they've done to you. your name will be cleared. And the Salvatores will learn that there are some lines you don't cross." Then he was gone, the heavy door closing behind him with a pneumatic hiss. Elena sank into one of the chairs, her mind reeling. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem was $47 in her checking account. Now she was a wanted woman, hiding in a panic room while a mafia boss waged war on her behalf. "Miss Elena?" She looked up. Marco stood there, holding a book, his dark eyes worried. "Are you okay?" "No," she wanted to say. "I'm not okay. I'm terrified and angry and trapped, and my entire life just got destroyed on the news." But looking at this traumatized child who'd already lost so much, she forced a smile. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just a little overwhelmed. Uncle Dante will fix it," Marco said with absolute certainty. "He always fixes things." "Does he?" "Yeah. When my parents died and I was so scared all the time, he fixed it by making the house super safe. When I had nightmares, he fixed it by sleeping in the chair in my room every night for 3 months. When I couldn't eat because my stomach hurt from being sad, he fixed it by finding the only food I could keep down strawberry ice cream and making sure I always had some." Elena's throat tightened. The image of this deadly man sleeping in a chair to comfort a grieving child, frantically stalking strawberry ice cream, was almost too much. "He loves you very much," she said softly. "I know." Marco climbed into the chair next to her, tucking himself against her side. "And I think he's starting to love you too. That's why he's so angry about what they did. Uncle Dante gets really angry when someone hurts the people he loves." Out of the mouths of babes, Elena thought. But before she could process that bombshell, Rosa called Marco over to help her organize the supply shelves, a transparent distraction. But Marco went willingly. Elena sat alone with her thoughts, trying to understand what her life had become, trying to understand the man who now controlled it. They spent 4 hours in the panic room. Rosa made sandwiches from the stocked supplies. Marco read aloud from his favorite book. Elena tried to grade the spelling test she'd somehow still had in her bag, but the normalcy of the task felt absurd given the circumstances. Finally, the intercom crackled to life. "All clear?" Dante's voice came through, rough with exhaustion. "You can come out." Rosa unlocked the door from the inside. The panic room could only be opened from within once sealed, Elena realized. Another layer of security. They emerged to find the mansion in full operational mode. Men in suits moved with purpose through the hallways. Phones rang constantly. The energy was controlled chaos, the aftermath of whatever Dante had set in motion. He found them in the hallway, still in the same suit but with his tie loosened, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 4 hours. "Marco, Rosa will take you upstairs. It's past your bedtime." "But Uncle Dante." "Now, Marco." The command was gentle but absolute. Marco hugged Elena quickly. She'd become his security blanket. She realized then let Rosa lead him away, leaving Elena alone with Dante in the hallway. "Walk with me," he said. She followed him through the mansion, past the controlled chaos, to a set of French doors that opened onto a covered terrace. The night air was cold, carrying the scent of rain and autumn leaves. In the distance, she could see the lights of Chicago glittering like a fallen constellation. Dante leaned against the stone railing, his broad shoulders tense. "It's done," he said finally. "The news story has been retracted. The police have issued a correction, calling it a case of mistaken identity. Your principal received a personal call from the superintendent, explaining the error. By morning, it will be like it never happened." Elena's knees went weak with relief. "How?" "I called in favors, applied pressure, reminded certain people that cooperation has its rewards and opposition has consequences." He said it matter-of-factly, like describing a business transaction rather than what was surely intimidation and bribery on a massive scale. "And the Salvatores?" His jaw clenched. "They're learning that lesson as we speak." "What does that mean?" Dante turned to face her fully. "It means 3 of their warehouses are currently on fire. Their drug pipeline through the port has been severed, and their second-in-command is missing. He'll turn up in pieces over the next few days. It means I'm doing what I do, Elena. I'm protecting what's mine by destroying what threatens it." The casual brutality should have horrified her. Part of her was horrified. But another part, the part that had seen her name dragged through the mud, that understood these people would have killed her without hesitation, felt a savage satisfaction. "You're not afraid of me," Dante observed, moving closer. "You should be." "I am afraid of you," Elena corrected. "I'm terrified, but I'm also starting to understand you." "And what do you understand?" She thought carefully before answering. That you live in a world where violence is currency, where showing weakness means death, where the only way to protect the people you love is to be more ruthless than your enemies. She met his dark eyes. You're not a monster, Dante. You're a man doing monstrous things because that's the only language this world understands. He stared at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. You sound like my wife. The words hung in the air between them. Isabella used to say the same thing. Dante continued, his voice rough. That I wasn't evil, just trapped in a system that demanded evil. She tried to save me from it, tried to pull me into the light. His hands gripped the railing, and it got her killed. That's not your fault, isn't it? He turned away, staring out at the city. I knew what I was, knew the risks, but I was selfish enough to want her anyway. To want a normal life, a wife, a child, and my selfishness got them killed. Elena moved to stand beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Marco told me you slept in a chair in his room for 3 months, that you stockpiled strawberry ice cream because it was all he could eat. Dante's throat worked. He told you that? He also said you're starting to love me. That's why you're so angry about what the Salvatores did. The admission hung between them, dangerous and electric. The kid's too observant, Dante muttered. Is he wrong? Dante finally looked at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. No, he's not wrong. I've known you less than 48 hours, and you've already become essential. To Marco, yes, but also to me. He reached out, his large hand cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. You make me remember what it felt like to be human, what it felt like before I buried that part of myself to survive. Elena leaned into his touch without meaning to. I don't know how to do this, how to be in your world. You're already doing it. You survived yesterday's attack. You're helping Marco heal. You're standing here with me instead of running. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You're stronger than you know, Elena. Or stupider. Maybe both. That ghost of a smile again. But I'm grateful for it. For you. The space between them evaporated. Elena wasn't sure who moved first. But suddenly Dante's arms were around her, pulling her against his solid chest. She buried her face in his shoulder, breathing in his scent, expensive cologne, gun oil, and something uniquely him. His embrace was fierce, possessive, protective, the kind of hold that promised safety even as it claimed ownership. I'm sorry, he murmured into her hair, for dragging you into this, for what it's cost you. I'm not. The words surprised her, but they were true. If I hadn't been there, Marco would be dead, and you'd have lost the last piece of your family. Dante pulled back just enough to look at her face. You really mean that? I really do. The kiss was inevitable, slow and deliberate, nothing like the desperate claiming of movies. Dante kissed her like he had all the time in the world, like she was precious and fragile and worth savoring. Elena melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt, her heart hammering. This was insane, dangerous, impossible. It was also undeniable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. This complicates things, he said roughly. Everything about this is complicated. True. He pulled back, his control reasserting itself. You should get some sleep. It's been a long day. Will you actually sleep? Or will you spend the night in meetings planning more retaliation? His lips quirked. Probably the latter. Dante, I know. I need to rest. I will. Eventually. He touched her face one more time, a fleeting caress. Thank you, Elena, for everything. She watched him walk back into the mansion, back to his war and his responsibilities and the weight of an empire built on blood. Then she stood on the terrace for a long time, her fingers touching her lips, trying to process what had just happened. She'd kissed a Mafia boss. More than that, she'd wanted to. And the most terrifying part was that she wanted to do it again. The next 2 weeks fell into a strange rhythm. Elena became part of the household, no longer a guest but a resident. She spent her days with Marco, officially becoming his tutor and unofficially becoming his anchor. They did lessons in the morning, math, reading, science, then spent afternoons in the gardens when Dante deemed it safe, or in the library when he didn't. Marco bloomed under the attention. His nightmares decreased. His smiles came more easily. He even started joking with the guards, asking them about their weapons and telling them bad knock-knock jokes. Elena watched the transformation with professional satisfaction and personal joy. This was why she'd become a teacher, to see children heal, grow, flourish. But her relationship with Dante grew more complicated by the day. They had dinner together most evenings, after Marco was in bed. Sometimes they talked about strategy. Dante valued her perspective, her ability to read people and situations through a psychological lens. Sometimes they talked about nothing: books, music, memories of who they'd been before their lives took these dark turns. And sometimes they didn't talk at all. Just sat together in comfortable silence while Dante worked through paperwork and Elena graded the lessons she still gave Marco, maintaining some semblance of normalcy. The tension between them was constant, simmering just below the surface. Dante didn't kiss her again, but she felt his eyes on her constantly. Felt the way his hand would linger on her back when he passed. Felt the careful control he exercised to maintain distance. He was protecting her, she realized. From himself, from the implications of what was growing between them. But protection only worked until it didn't. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night, 2 weeks after the attack that had changed everything. Elena was in the library, curled up in one of the leather chairs with a book she wasn't really reading. The house was quiet, Marco asleep. Rosa retired to her quarters, the guards on their silent patrols. She didn't hear Dante enter, just suddenly felt his presence, looked up, and found him standing in the doorway watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "No." He moved into the room, closing the door behind him. "I keep thinking about something you said." "What's that?" "That I'm trapped in a system that demands evil. That I'm not a monster, just a man doing monstrous things." He sat on the edge of her chair, close enough that she could feel his body heat. "I want to believe that. Want to believe I'm still capable of being something other than what I've become." Elena set her book aside. "You are, Dante. You already are." "How? By killing the Salvatores? By destroying anyone who threatens my territory? That's not redemption, Elena. That's just more violence. You're doing it to protect Marco, to protect me. That's not the same as doing it for power or profit. Isn't it?" His dark eyes searched hers. "Or am I just justifying evil with prettier excuses?" Elena reached out, taking his hand. His fingers were warm, calloused, scarred, the hands of a fighter. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" she asked softly. "I see a man who sleeps in chairs to comfort a grieving child, who stockpiles strawberry ice cream, who turns his entire empire upside down to protect a teacher he barely knows. I see someone who could have left me to die but chose to save me. Who could have isolated Marco completely but is willing to consider supervised playdates because he knows his nephew needs socialization." She brought his hand to her cheek, holding it there. "You're not irredeemable, Dante. You're just scared of hoping you might be." His control finally shattered. Dante pulled her into his lap in one swift motion, his mouth claiming hers with desperate intensity. This kiss was nothing like the first. It was hunger and need, and 2 weeks of denied wanting crashing together. Elena kissed him back with equal fervor, her fingers tangling in his dark hair, her body pressed against his solid strength. She felt safe and desired and alive in ways she'd forgotten were possible. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante buried his face in her neck. "You're dangerous," he murmured against her skin. "You make me want things I have no right to want." "Like what?" "Like a future. Like redemption. Like you." He pulled back to look at her, his expression raw. "I can't offer you a normal life, Elena. I can't promise safety or peace or anything resembling ordinary. All I can offer is this: my protection, my loyalty, and whatever pieces of my humanity you manage to resurrect. What if that's enough?" Elena whispered. "What if I don't need ordinary? You deserve better than me. That's not your decision to make." Dante stared at her, searching for doubt, for fear, for any sign she didn't understand what she was saying. But Elena met his gaze steadily, certain despite the insanity. She'd spent her whole life playing it safe, following the rules, staying in her lane, and where had it gotten her? Drowning in debt, working herself to exhaustion, alone. Maybe it was time to be reckless, to choose danger over safety, to choose feeling over numbness, to choose him. "Elena," Dante said, his voice rough with warning and want. "Don't," she interrupted. "Don't talk yourself out of this. Don't tell me all the reasons it's a bad idea. I already know them. I'm choosing this anyway." "Why?" "Because you're worth it," she said simply. "Because Marco needs both of us. Because I'm tired of being afraid of everything." She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. Because when I'm with you, I feel like I matter. Like I'm more than just some broke teacher barely surviving. You see me, Dante. Really see me. And that's terrifying and exhilarating, and I don't want to give it up. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. A kiss that felt like a promise and a claiming and a surrender all at once. When they finally separated, Dante kept her in his lap, his arms wrapped around her like he was afraid she might disappear. If we do this, he said quietly, there's no going back. You become mine completely, my woman, my partner, under my protection for the rest of your life. The Salvatores will see you as my weakness. Other families will target you to get to me. You'll never be safe, never be normal, never be free of this world. I understand. Do you? Really? His grip tightened. Because I need you to understand, Elena. Once you're mine, I'll never let you go. I'm possessive and controlling, and I don't share. I'll know where you are every moment of every day. I'll have guards on, being you constantly. I'll vet every person you interact with. I'll be the jealous, overprotective nightmare you never asked for. I know who you are, Dante. And you're still saying yes? Elena thought about it, really thought about it. About the life she was choosing, the danger, the violence, the lack of freedom, the constant security, the reality of loving a man who solved problems with bullets. Then she thought about Marco's smile, about Dante sleeping in chairs to comfort him, about feeling valued and protected and seen for the first time in years. Yes, she said firmly. I'm saying yes. Dante exhaled, like she'd just given him absolution. He stood, lifting her with him, and carried her toward the door. Where are we going? My room. His voice was dark with promise. Where I'm going to spend the rest of the night showing you exactly what choosing me means. Elena's heart raced, but she didn't protest. Just wrapped her arms around his neck and let herself be carried toward a future that made no sense, and every sense simultaneously. She'd saved a child from gunfire, and in doing so, she'd saved herself from a life of quiet desperation. Now she belonged to the most dangerous man in Chicago, and she was okay with that. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.